Today we are driving the Kia EV2, this new small electric vehicle in an upright SUV style. And is it even better than the upcoming competitors like a VW ID Cross and so on? Because this one has a lot of clever features and optionally also a relatively big battery for such a small car. We're going to dig into the details with Thomas Nautical in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go here today, starting with the GT line, soon driving and also presenting you the lower or mid-trim versions. And this one here, top trim GT line, we haven't it shown to you yet. Then here you have the high gloss black in the lower part, a sportier look as you know from the GT line, and this modern look here, closed EV front, also like the bigger brothers. So it looks like a small Kia EV9, so to speak. Then the length here at 4 meters and 6 or 160 inches. This is a small vehicle indeed, but still upright, that you have a lot of space on the inside. And then you can see here, you know, these inserts that make this SUV look, so to speak. This one also a matte color finish. I really love that. 16-inch it would start with the wheels. These are the biggest 19-inch here with the GT line. So this is then the top spec. Later more about the pricing. Let's take a look if we have a frunk or not here. There we go. And then, well, there is a small one. I mean, this could maybe house a small charging cable and so on. So yeah, why not? And also some insulation here. So there we go. And you always have front wheel drive. Acceleration figures will be 8.5 seconds for the standard range battery or 9.7 for the big battery, because there's just then more weight. Soon more to the battery details. Here, very low tail lamp here in the lower part. So maybe too low for the turning indicators. Tell me in the comments. And once again, a modern tech off-road look then in the low part. The GT line, once again, a little bit sportier, but I can also show you then the other versions very, very soon. As for the battery and charging port is actually on the passenger side. So the small battery is at 42 kilowatt hours. We're going to drive the small battery here today. They start with that later, and also combined here with the GT line only available with the big battery, 61 kilowatt hours. And that is relatively large when you consider that the ID Cross, for example, has a 52 kilowatt hour battery. So 61 kilowatt hour, pretty large. Here, manual charging flap in the front, passenger side, 11 or now. Option 22 kilowatt AC, first time for Kia, that's cool, and around 100 kilowatt DC charging. And both batteries charge in around 30 minutes, 10 to 80% state of charge. The acceleration figures are 8.7 seconds for the small battery and 9.5 seconds, 0 to 1 kilometers an hour for the big battery. And by the way, up there by the windows, we also have some spectators. There's a very, very cute cat, just filmed it with the zoom in. And yeah, she's obviously watching us all the time here. Interior, here's the key fob with a very nice matte surface here. And when you open the vehicle here, flush door handles come towards you, and then they are manual and give you a very good feedback. There's actually a very nice door closing sound as well, so that's pretty cool. Then this one here, the GT line, has the dark fabric inserts right here, and it doesn't have this yellow on the inside, but the white one. And then here, which is pretty cool, here you have heated seats and option also the cool seats and heated steering wheel, and with real single buttons. I love that. Also standard window levers, everything easy to control. Optional Harman Kardon sound system you get here as well, with a nice cover, hardback on the inside of the doors here though. And then the GT line also has further black fabric right here, for example. The steering wheel has real buttons and has this dual tone scheme. Drive mode selector is on the lower part, right side for the volume control. And GT line also has here these top spec seats. This is a perforated leatherette. It's very nice quality, very soft and comfortable. Also here in the dual tone scheme once again. And this is, as I said, also then option available with seat cooling. So you get the GT line, already have a lot of options included. And then, yeah, there's, for example, this seat cooling package, which then adds, you know, even more comfort. And let's turn on the ignition. And we can also here move the seats and so on. This then also the electric seat. You can also put it a little bit up in the front part, for example. lumbar support. And the cool thing is that it's a small vehicle, but it still fits tall adults. And then here with 1A9 6V2, this also fits headroom-wise. Steering wheel is manual, up and down, in and out. Very massive, very large steering wheel for such a small vehicle. The only thing I found that with a lot of Hyundais and Kias, you can also see it from the other perspective, that it's always getting a little bit close with my knees with the gear selector, for example. But the main thing is that the seats are very soft and comfortable, and the whole car is animal free, so also at the steering wheel, and they use very good material choices actually, so you have a good build quality. I like that. What's also pretty cool, here in the GT line you also get the front laminated glass that's also more silent on the motorway. And now here to the cockpit, also with the GT line focus here today, different from the car we will soon going to drive, because we haven't shown you the GT line here for this vehicle yet, and this is really like this most desired one. And yeah, I really love it because of this two-tone scheme, the high-grade leather and so on. The seats all look cool, and here the head restraints, by the way, they are then from fabric, and look at that. I mean, especially for this vehicle segment, unusual comfort. Also, when you maybe want to relax at a charging station and so on, it's really nice, soft comfort for you. Oh, I think I would just, you know, drive, relax with my head all the way back all the time like this. Oh, and here we also have a panoramic roof actually. So you can also get this one that can also be opened. And let's see, because I see there's also a shade. So there we go. And yeah, so when it's really, really hot, you can also close this shade there. That's also cool. Then we have more black fabric for the dashboard here, and manual air vent control here, for example, up and down, left and right. And I also like these manual controls here for the temperature and also for the fan speed. So it's easy to control also while driving. 2 times 12.3 inch, these screens, and in the middle you have another like climate screen, but you could use that, but it doesn't make too much sense because you have it in a manual control unit here anyways, right? And this is what I mean here with my knee. So when you're tall also from the torso, then you don't have it too high, you know, so yeah, that's from my size at least always a problem here with the knee, and we've seen it in many recent Kia and Hyundai models indeed. And then in the lower part we have USB-C chargers here, even 100 watt. That's actually pretty cool. And then there's an inductive charging pad. However, this one is not ventilated, so I would rather use the cable charging. I also like this rather subtle middle console color here. There's, for example, some cup holders, not adaptive though. This one you can, for example, set in your desired space. There's a lot of space in the middle console, and you've maybe also seen the studio episode. There are also trims which has like these yellow inserts in the middle console and also inside of doors. I don't fancy that much, so I prefer this more subtle dark styling. So there it looks really elegant, I feel. Then here the armrest sets up and even more space underneath. I mean, these surfaces here, not sure how long they will look good. Let's see about that. So that's maybe the only thing, but everything, you know, from the dashboard here, also manual volume jog and so on, and especially the seat quality and the comfort is really nice. So if we now think, hey, which small EV which is really nice from the interior and is also comfortable and animal free, and for a small EV already offers a large battery, then this one indeed checks all the boxes. And I also saw that Leah said, she also said like, oh, this GT line here is it's really fancy. Yes, it will be the most expensive one, but definitely most fancy one. Here, by the way, the glove box is actually considering quite spacious and also folds down in a slow way. So yeah, really cool. And you have, by the way, more chargers here at the back of the seats. So we'll also take a look at the back part very soon, because there you also have this special thing that you have the 4-seater, but also the 5-seater. Let's take a look now to the rear seats here in the GT line and the 4-seater. And this is really exciting because in the 4-seater, it's just about a €300 option. Here you can slide this forward or backward for more trunk space or more legroom. Isofix outside, and the 4-seater here has 2 large seats. So although you have a small car, you have very good comfort in the rear because it's extremely wide. This is how I would be driving here. And then there's still legroom left. So this is like really like a room or space wonder, so to speak. That's pretty cool. And it's also an SUV. That means the angle of the legs is not too bad. And I still fit in here space-wise. So this is a very clever vehicle. And by the way, these you can use for jacket hangers. You can use them also to like get up, for example, get in. If I think about maybe I carry my grandparents along, USB-C charging in the seats and 100 watt each again. And in the lower part, even floor, you also have a real power socket, for example. And I really love this rear seat. This is probably the best rear seat comfort for a small car. And I mean, considering the legroom I have here, and here, when the passenger seat is a little bit more forward, you have even more legroom. So this is really great and so flexible as well. So they really paid attention, you know, to the everyday practicability. And here you can also change the inclination, more upright, more cargo position, or then, what the, look at that. I mean, this is very cool. I mean, this car is barely 4 meters long. This is really crazy. So I think this is also one of the most like significant unique selling points of this vehicle, that you can use it for many different purposes and that it just delivers a lot for the exterior dimensions. So the competitors might have a problem with that. 5-seater, 360 liters, the 4-seater, 400 liters. Why is that? First of all, here the 4-seater has this cover. You can also remove that, and then you also can just clip it in like this. But if we remove everything, then you can see actually that underneath there is also some more space, and you could also remove this whole thing as well. At the moment it's then here connected. You can also, you know, unconnect it basically. It's also possible. And then here the cool thing is you can slide it backward and forward and then also gain more trunk length like this. So that's pretty cool. And of course you can also fold it like this. You have this even transition to that, but you can also just fold it from here because it's, you know, close enough. There we go. And so you're also very flexible here, especially with the 4-seater. And I think that's why also here, yeah, with this function, the 4-seater is actually way to go. There you can see, you know, how the difference are when you put it backward or then in the inclination forward again, or forward like this, backward and so on. Yeah, this is really fun. And here as a comparison in frost blue, the earth trim. Earth trim is mid-trim level, and you can see it's a different graphic in the lower part. The GT-Line comparison would be maybe a little bit more expressive, so to speak. Here we also have 18-inch wheels, so one size smaller. And another difference is that the rear graphic is also a little bit different than here in this lower part. Then, yeah, but I think both work quite well in design. What do you think? Maybe the only thing that the lights here are placed relatively low. The reason for that was, by the way, that they wanted to keep this straight line right here, and that's why they had to put the lights then a little bit lower. And as a comparison here, the earth trim on the interior, here we have fabric seats all the way and in these rather subtle colors, and yeah, it looks also quite nice. Usually it's often the case that fabric seats are even more comfortable from the surface. Here in this case, I have the feeling somehow that the leatherette GT-Line seats are a little bit more comfortable. And of course, you can also equip them with the seat cooling. And the only thing is here, I mean, when you're a tall adult in the front, it's not only the thing here with the shifting, but also in general, you know, like when I'm sitting here and how my knees are bent. So I would say that maybe the only thing I can find here is that it's not the most ideal position for tall people, for people with long legs in the front. That's maybe the thing. And somehow I had the feeling that the GT-Line seat maybe is a little bit better. And here also, this is the base steering wheel. So the GT-Line steering wheel, you remember, had a dual tone scheme and also this 3-spoke design, and this one has this you see what I mean? This design? Yeah, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And Leah has discovered some very interesting themes in the infotainment system, because you can see here, this is the National Geographic theme.
The
so
lion.
oh, this is like our avatar then is the car. And look at that. Oh, these small animal kids. Oh, here as the symbols, and they have different schemes. I heard they have even a Star Wars scheme, and the World Cup scheme now, like for the FIFA World Cup.
Even when you park, I think.
It's like, I think when we shut down the vehicle, and then I think when we start, what was it? Or when you open the door, let's see, what was it? There, yeah, when you open the door, there we go. See also here, like the car is a leopard then now. Here, by the way, after about 2 minutes of loading time, this is the official FIFA World Cup scheme. So you can also, make yourself on the way to the World Cup then. Now the 5-seater going through bench comparison, and here you can see why the 4-seater is so important here, because I have hardly any legroom here. Why is that? The fixed bench in the 5-seater is basically in the middle position of the 4-seater. So the 4-seater, you can slide the bench forward or backward, and here it's always, in that middle position, as if you would slide the 4-seater slidable bench exactly in the middle. That's why hardly any legroom here. You have a little bit more trunk length than, yes, but you cannot just vary it. So this vehicle here, definitely way to go for the 4-seater with a slidable bench. Just in the measurements, they are kind of similar here, because you have 1.40 meters in width. Then the middle length measure is here about 60 centimeters, 23 inches. And then the total length is 1.35 meters, 53 inches. And well, the height is the question. I mean, you can have this storage right there. And for the height, you can also take out that whole thing here. So yeah, that's actually quite cool. And then we can have this maximum height of some 85 centimeters or 34 inches. Wow. Starting to drive the Kia EV2 here in some urban surrounding first, soon then motorway and efficiency tests and so on. Oh, with these 18-inch wheels here, suspension is not too harsh actually. You know that in the GT-Line there would also be 19-inch available. Could get a little bit rougher on the one hand. On the other hand, it's very interesting that the 19-inch on the GT-Line have a special foam also on the inside of the tire, that it's actually even better for noise development. So there's less noise than with these tires, with these 19-inch. Very interesting, right? And here, since it's not the GT-Line we're driving here, with the standard range battery, with a small one, we also don't have the insulation, the dual, like this lamination in the windows. We would also get that standard then in the GT-Line, but so far here in the city it's still silent, so it's a calm surrounding. And they also paid special attention to that, like from underneath and also in the front there, in this like in this whole compartment, also like the front from underneath and so on. They paid attention to add some extra foam and dampening materials that's actually staying quite silent here on the interior. And so far in the city, that's also working well. Looking forward soon to the difference on the motorway. Well, this one didn't want to go. And good and smooth transitions here between brake and throttle. You can of course set the recuperation modes. So at the moment, this is my likable setting, level 1. So there's some recuperation, because usually when you lift your feet off the throttle, then or lift your foot off the throttle, then you want to decelerate a little bit, but maybe not more. But you can also make it stronger, and you can also hold it then for the I pedal. The I pedal then would be that you also come to an absolute standstill to have this true one pedal driving effect. But you can really just change it how you want to. Here's some cobblestones, and I think with these 18-inch wheels here, it's still a good setup, that it's still sporty in the ride, but also very comfortable. You have this seating position, which is somewhat SUV-like, but also somewhat small car-alike. I'm sitting very low, could of course get a little bit higher as well. The only problem, told you in the interior part, that my knee is always hitting here this shifting lever. So I don't know, maybe I have to find some different seating position then to make it a little bit more suitable than here to me. Pressing and holding the small volume jog here on the steering wheel, by the way, deactivates this EU speed chime law. It's also a good and quick hotkey to deactivate it, also when you just start driving, for example. Direct and likable steering, and the car is also not shaking up much and so on, that you can also drive in a fun and agile way here in the city. So yeah, I mean,
Sorry, I didn't hear that clearly.
Okay.
I think
There's
that
a lot going on. Yeah.
there was a lot going on. I think that was probably a combination of the emergency braking assistant and the voice assistant at the same time, thinking Thomas is calling me. I have no idea, but yeah. Thanks, we're fine. So getting out of here, of the roundabout, it's also pretty nice and agile. You also have like the instant boost. And remember, since we're driving the small battery here, we also have a better, quicker acceleration. We can probably show that to you here from the traffic light. Actually, it's slightly uphill, but I can go, for example, here to sport mode with the Kia EV2. And oh, here we go. Already here. And that's it, 0 to 40 kilometers an hour. And that's quick enough. Say here, even uphill, 8.7 seconds with the small battery, 9.5 seconds with the bigger battery. So there is this gap because the bigger battery is just heavier. Yeah. But I think for most situations it will be enough. Looking forward to how it will be on the motorway very soon. You might argue for the small battery, maybe because of the better acceleration. It will rather be a question of pricing. And if you rather want to use this one here in rural surrounding in the city and you don't drive really long-term motorway, if you're thinking about getting it as a primary vehicle and also thinking about maybe some longer motorway routes, then of course the big battery is way to go for. You know, there was this logic 42 kilowatt hours versus 61 kilowatt hours, and 61 is very reasonably sized for this segment here. That's the cool thing, that you can do so many things, different things with this vehicle, since we have a lot of space in the rear. Either we could easily travel with 4 tall adults now, or we could go shopping and get a lot of stuff, actually. Maybe even furniture. That would also work with this vehicle, you know. And that's I think the key to this vehicle, that you can have so many different use cases here. So far, really calm in the city. Good, likable driving feeling, ticks all the boxes. Blind spot monitor here in the side mirrors, for example. Cruise control is set here on the left side of the steering wheel. Then here in the tunnel, you can also see something of this ambient lighting. That looks fancy. Of course, you can also change the colors. And, yeah, but actually quite cool, but not too much. And then you can also set here the assistance systems at the steering wheel. You can also activate or deactivate this lane keeping assist. Yeah, I mean, rather used on the motorway, of course, and that's where we're going right now. Right now, sport mode one more time, and on the motorway. And let's have some acceleration from, let's say, 60 to whatever we can score. Let's go. Okay, that's uphill. 100. And that's 120. Almost. I mean, it was uphill. You see, it's not the performance car, but yeah, uphill it could still be a little bit quicker when you think about you need to get on a German motorway very quickly or something like that. Yeah, and then remember that the bigger battery will even have a little bit less performance. So yeah, I mean, huge performance you can't expect out of this vehicle here. It's also not the main focus. However, also going back here to the normal mode, because it's more about like throttle input as well. At 100 kilometers an hour, it's still actually pretty silent. So, and remember, this is not the GT-Line. It doesn't have like the lamination here, and here now at 120 kilometers an hour, still okay. I mean, 100 is really, really nice. 120,
A little bit loud here,
yeah,
but
that's
not that much.
picking up a little bit. So I would say then, if you want to drive faster than 100 very often, then maybe the GT-Line is for you, that you have then the installation, but still think on a good level. And now we can test the assistance systems once again. Also now signals me, you know, we are on the motorway now. And yeah, the reactions from the steering are sometimes maybe a little bit nervous, maybe just a little bit, but overall fine. Also keeping the distance to the car in front of us, and you can also drive it on the motorway. If you think about a higher segment vehicle, what would you gain? Maybe even a little bit more seating comfort in comparison to these seats. However, I have the feeling that the GT-Line seats were also a little bit better. So I start to get the feeling that really the GT-Line is the motorway version with bigger battery. Whoa, that is close driving from these guys there. Then, probably looking at smartphone. Then you have I feel even a little bit better seats in the GT-Line. Then the foam in the tires for noise insulation, and also the laminated windows. This is your model setup that you can very well use it for a lower price in the city. However, I think it's still doing very well here on the motorway. So it's calm, it's not too loud. Also, how the suspension behaves here, you can easily drive it also on the motorway, feeling very settled, very neutral. I think they have done a good job with tuning that chassis here and finding a very good neutral balance that everyone can be happy with this vehicle actually. So one more lane change here. Yeah, just keeping it very, very calm. So, as I said initially, this car is just ticking all the boxes when you say, hey, I want like a small car, should be electric, and I just need it for everyday driving, you know, and maybe nothing special, but sometimes also something special, like with this very flexible rear there. But here in the driving part, I can't really complain about anything else that I have not so much space for my knee here with the shifting wheel, but everything else, yeah. Sorry, I'm always getting back to that because it's really kind of annoying for me. For some, maybe not. Some also wrote me like, yeah, Thomas, I don't know why I have a problem there, but maybe it's a different body posture than, that just happens with humans. But everything else feels really, really good. And then these new small vehicles sometimes really let you forget that you are in a very small car, because they already have these larger car features and already feel a little bit more refined. And that's definitely the case here also for the Kia EV2. Pricing, very interesting. It starts with a small battery below 27,000 euros. Then you add around 7,000 euros for the bigger battery. However, it's not only the battery, it's also because the bigger battery also starts with a higher trim already. So that is then like the extra price. Then if you go for the GT-Line, which also includes the big battery, 37,000 euros. And then if you add some more extras, like it's also right here, you can also add a heat pump, panoramic roof and so on, 42,000 euros, really like full spec. And yes, EVs are still a little bit more expensive than the combustion engine counterparts, but they are slowly getting there. And I think the interesting thing is like how much car you're getting for that. And especially here, for such a small car, it's a relatively large battery. It doesn't have the best CD value of 0.29 because it has this SUV style. But then again, it has so much space and flexibility on the inside for that. And now as for the real world range, we have collected a lot of data now. Did a test 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour on the motorway, back and forth, equalization of topography, and 120 kilometers an hour, 70 miles an hour. And very interesting, you have to think about that. Maybe it's not the most efficient as for the CD value, but it's a small car, has not so wide tires, and the frontal area is not so large in comparison to bigger EVs, and that's why we could also score some very decent consumption figures here. For example, in the first test, 100 kilometers an hour on motorway, 15 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers, 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour would mean a real world range then at that speed for the big battery of 400 kilometers or 250 miles, or for the small battery here of 280 kilometers or 170 miles. And then at the higher speed, 120 kilometers an hour, we could also 70 miles an hour, we could score some 19 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers, so 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour would then mean a real world range of 320 kilometers or 200 miles for the big battery and 220 kilometers or 140 miles for the small battery. Then you have like an estimation of what you can score with that. City driving, of course, the range will be higher each, but it's actually, I think, pretty decent to know that when you get this one with the big battery, that you can drive here 100 kilometers an hour on the motorway for 400 kilometers or 250 miles. That's quite impressive. Of course, today here in Portugal, ideal conditions for EV, 20 degrees Celsius, about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, dry conditions, everything best case for EVs, maybe a little bit AC running, you know, but that's it. Tell me what you think here about the new Kia EV2, and now it's time to check out some competitors.